So I found this article on this blog way back, well, back in 2013, kind of interesting. And since I did some videos on the Kenneth Arnold sighting, which I am very fascinated by, um, and the Flight 105 sighting as well. Did a video on that. This is related to the Kenneth Arnold sighting. So this is it's it's it deals with like the pre-Arnold UFO sightings made in like the months prior to the Kenneth Arnold sighting, not years prior, but like months prior. So around the same period, but like prior to Kenneth Arnold's own UFO sighting. So let's just delve into this and see what more we can learn. Because this is the time, around this time period, it was it was a UFO craze, the late 40s. Um, so it's a very interesting time period for UFO sightings. One of the most fascinating time periods. You have Roswell, you got the Arnold sighting, you got the Rhodes pictures, all this stuff, and there's a lot more than just those. And I want to know what they are. I want to learn about them and see. So there's also okay. So let's just see what this says here. It's from someone named Kevin Randle. Never came across anything from him until now. It says, I have been chasing sightings that predate Arnold, the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting, but just those made in the months prior to that rather than in the years earlier. I've been looking for documentation that proves a sighting was pre-Arnold, meaning that it was published in some form before June 24th of 1947. My luck has been sporadic. I've found some, but there are more out there. The trick was to figure out where to look. Um, some of these cases I haven't done yet. I haven't done a video on that I want to do a video on really bad. I just need to find out more information to do these videos. But there are many cases that were reported after Arnold, but that were made prior to him. So, for example, there is a report from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, dated May 17th of 1947, made by Byron, a person named Byron Savage. Now, I want to do a video on this sighting. So sometime soon, I want to do a video on that and the others mentioned here. So there's a sighting from May made by Byron Savage. This is just this is just a month prior, who said that he and his wife had seen a round, flat object traveling nearly due north at a speed estimated at 3 times that of a jet. Now, that's the exact same speed that Arnold estimated his sighting, his UFO craft to have been going. I just remembered that. I have found nothing that documents this sighting prior to Arnold. But the Air Force accepted the date and listed it in the master index for Project Blue Book. Another May sighting took place on the 19th at Manitou Springs, that's Colorado Springs, Colorado, but wasn't published until June 28th in the Denver Post. So You talking about the 19th of May, I guess? Or the 19th of June? Either way, it would have been prior to June 24th. This is, let's see. But I'm assuming he's talking about May 19th. Dean Hauser, along with 6 other railroad workers, said that he and they watched a silver metallic object fly in from the northwest, stop overhead, and then maneuver erratically for some 20 minutes before it disappeared to the west-northwest in a cloudless blue sky. Huh. A similar case dated June 12th of 1947 came from Weiser, Idaho, with Weiser being redacted from the Blue Book Master Index for some reason. According to the information, Mrs. H. Erickson, identified that way as a convention of the time, said that she had seen 2 high-speed round objects at a high altitude. They were flying in a trail formation and left a vapor trail that persisted from more than an hour. Huh. But they were round objects, though. All these sightings were by civilians, though Savage is described as a field engineer. Savage is... I don't recall even, let's say here, I don't recall no story by any Savage. Oh, Byron Savage, duh. Okay. Okay. I mentioned this simply because it seems that in early 1947, the military was much more interested in sightings by military pilots. Yeah. And since a military pilot in late 1946 or early 47 might be inclined to mention such things through military channels, those at ATIC would be aware of their sightings. This means that there was a mechanism for collecting the data on such observations, but nothing shows up in the Project Blue Book files. There are many examples of these early sightings by military pilots. The first listed military sighting is from June 28th of 1947 in Montgomery, Alabama. There was another civilian pilot sighting on June 14th, 1947, but like so many others, it was not reported until after Arnold. The witness Dick Rankin, claimed some 7,000 hours of flight experience, but was on the ground when he saw the V formation fly over. In a statement to the military, Rankin wrote, "My name is Richard Rankin. I am 47 years old and have flown since I was 19. I first soloed in an aircraft in 1919. Wow. I have accomplished 7,000 hours in the air as pilot of both civilian and military aircraft. I am well acquainted with most articles that one would see in the air, and I feel that I am well qualified to say when I see articles flying through the air, although I would not attempt to say that I am infallible. The following is an account of what I saw on the 14th of June, 1947, from the yard of my home at That was in Bakersfield, California. Okay, so here's one relatively close to the Arnold sighting, June 14th. So, let's see here. At approximately 12 noon on the 14th of June, I was lying in the front yard of my home. There was a lad mowing the lawn at the time. I looked up into the sky and saw 10 articles flying from south to the north at what I would judge to be 350 miles per hour. As I have stated before, I have done quite a lot of map work with the U.S. Forest Service. I distinctly remember that at the time I saw the articles, I mentioned it to the lad who was mowing the lawn at the time. I told the lad that the objects were, in all probability, some sort of Army or Navy test planes from the nearby test centers on the deserts of Southern California. At the time, I did not give the slightest thought to anything but that the objects were some sort of test ship for the government service. The objects resembled the pictures that I have seen of the XF5U1, the so-called flying flapjack. Now, the flying flapjack is similar to the flying pancake, if you're familiar with those craft, that the Navy is testing. After the objects disappeared, I proceeded into the house and had my noon meal. At approximately... Hold on a second. So he saw 10 craft flying from 10. So he said the objects resembled the pictures of the flying flapjack or flying pancake, which looks almost exactly like the flying flapjack, I think. At approximately 2:15 p.m., I went back into the yard to sit and lie in the shade. At this time, the objects reappeared going from north to south. Okay, so opposite direction. Although this time, there were only 7 of them. When I first saw the original 10 objects, they were flying in a V formation with one object straggling in the rear of the formation. When the objects appeared the second time, they were still in the V formation, although there were only 7 of the objects at this time. I remember at this time that I told the lad who was still working on the lawn that probably 3 of the objects had proceeded back to their base on a different course. I actually thought that this was the case, that the other 3 objects had probably gone back to their base on the other side of the mountains from Bakersville. A week later, when I read of Mr. Kenneth Arnold's claiming that he had seen articles flying through the air over the Cascade Mountains in Washington, I realized that the articles I saw were probably the same thing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because this was around the exact same time period. Huh. Well, this is extremely relevant then. This sighting for the the Richard Rankin sighting, yeah. So I didn't even know about this until now. Like, this is the first time I'm hearing of this. I'll do another video on this then too. See what we can dig up for that, a video on that. So we've got the got some good ones here already that I'm discovering. Maybe you are too. Like the Byron Savage one, the Dean Hauser one, the Mrs. Erickson one, um, and now this Richard Rankin one. Um, so okay, so let's see here. Um, that wasn't all of the Richard Rankin commentary. I'm just trying to find where I left off. Let's see here. I was still reluctant to mention this to anyone thinking that they would probably say I was crazy. After some time, I mentioned the incident to the editor of the Oregonian, a Portland, Oregon newspaper. At this time, I was in Portland for the remainder of the summer. Okay. The sighting is interesting because of the description of the objects, which matched that given by Arnold. Had he told this to anyone prior to Arnold's sighting, had there been any sort of documentation of it prior to Arnold, and had he not mentioned Arnold by name and location, suggesting that he was well aware of the Arnold sighting, this would be a wonderful bit of corroboration for Arnold. Yeah, yeah. Jesus. Um, there is another document in the Project Blue Book files about this, and it is a memorandum for the officer in charge. The military was apparently attempting to find Richard Rankin in California and ran their check through various Palm Springs agencies, including the police, the newspaper, Chamber of Commerce, but could find almost no record of him there. Um, on July. Wait a minute. What? On July 11th, 1947, according to the memorandum, the postmaster in Palm Springs was asked if a person named Richard Rankin, had ever lived in Palm Springs. Ryland Gorham said Gorham, had lived there for 14 years and he didn't recognize the Rankin's name, which isn't all that surprising given the large transient population in the area, not to mention the fact that in 1947 Rankin lived in Bakersfield. Okay. The problem was the newspaper article, which seems to have generated the investigation mentioned. Rankin now operates a string of auto courts, spending his winters at Palm Springs. That same article mentions that Rankin has seen the objects over Bakersfield, which would suggest another avenue for investigation as well. What makes this disturbing, considering all that has transpired here in the last few days, meaning the NSA monitoring of nearly everything in the name of national security, is the following from that memorandum. Oh. A check of general delivery records revealed a letter addressed to Mr. Rankin, Palm Springs, mailed from Cicero, Indiana, postmarked at Cicero, Indiana, July 1947 at 5 p.m. The return address on the envelope was listed as the Gospel Tract Worker, Route 1, Cicero, Indiana. Mr. Gorham permitted the contents of the envelope to be examined inasmuch as the Contents was third-class material and the envelope not sealed. The records were of a religious nature concerning the sad plight of American non-churchgoers, the second coming of Christ, and etc. Superintendent of Mails was contacted by Mr. Gorham and stated that there was a Mr. Rankin who received mail through the general delivery office of the Palm Springs post office, but that the last mail, other than the letter mentioned above, came through the post office approximately 2 years ago. The superintendent of mails seems to have a very uncanny memory and recalled where the mail coming for Rankin had been addressed to. This mail was addressed to Rankin in care of a trailer camp located in Palm Springs. On calling the trailer camp office, it was found that Mr. Rankin had lived in the camp but departed approximately 2 years ago and left no forwarding address. Investigation is continuing in an effort to locate Mr. Rankin and obtain a statement from him. Wow, that was okay. That was all over the place. Clearly, they finally succeeded in finding Rankin and getting a statement. Interestingly, his return address, though mostly redacted, showed that he was in Portland, Oregon. I'm not sure why it was such a task for them to find him. Given the information in the newspaper, which said Rankin, who plans to spend the summer here at 834 Northeast Simpson Street, this sighting can be seen as extremely important. The description of the UFOs that they looked like the flying flapjack matches that given by Arnold. And it matches that of the photographs taken by William Rhodes about 2 weeks after the Arnold sighting was reported in the newspapers. Now, I did a video, of course, obviously I did a video on the Kenneth Arnold ones, and I did one on the Rhodes sighting. If you do want to check those, if you do happen to want to check those out. There's sketches here by Kenneth Arnold, and there's, of course, the Rhodes actual photograph here. And I love that the Rhodes photograph even exists, because we get kind of an idea on what these people were seeing. And there is a really close resemblance to the Kenneth Arnold's original drawing of the object, which he drew for the Army, and the Rhodes photograph of July 7th of 47. I mean, if you look and see, I mean, it is very similar. Now, some later drawings by Kenneth Arnold look different than these. Like, these are the original drawings. So, and all right. Let's see here. To look at all this from the perspective of someone who accepts the idea of extraterrestrial visitation, this information is important. First, those earlier sightings show that something was happening before Arnold. Right. Second, Rankin's report reinforces Arnold because Rankin described an object that resembled the objects Arnold saw. Third, the Rhodes photographs further reinforces Arnold because it is another sighting from another part of the country that resembles what Arnold saw. Yeah, these are really close. None of these men knew one another, see? And each reported his sighting independently of the other. The timing is interesting because all the sightings were within 1 month of each other, suggesting that they were seeing something real. Each of these sightings seems to support the other, and then add in those sightings from May and early June, and a very interesting and realistic picture emerges. Everything suggests that this is being seen. What is being seen is something that was not created on Earth. But looking at all this from the other side of the spectrum, that is from the skeptical side, we must note that Rankin didn't make his report until after Arnold. Rankin, in fact, mentions Arnold, which means that he was aware of Arnold's sighting and Arnold's description of the objects. Rhodes' photographs were taken over 2 weeks after Arnold's sightings, which means if they were faked, Rhodes had the information about what the objects looked like, while none of the men knew each other. The Arnold sighting was reported around the country. It is clear that Rankin knew about it before he made his report, and Rhodes, coming after Arnold, certainly could have been influenced by it. While it is true that neither men knew each other, it is also true that those following Arnold could easily have drawn their descriptions from him. The final point here is that the government investigators on this case pawed through Rankin's mail. While I suppose, since it was third-class mail and the envelope was unsealed, it was legal for them to look at it, that still doesn't mean that they should have gone through it. I suppose the legal definition would be no expectation of privacy because of the classification of the mail and the open envelope. For those interested, the Air Force finally determined that Rankin had seen birds. Oh, birds. Well, of course they would come to a conclusion like that, though. To me, it seems ridiculous that a pilot with 7,000 hours of flight time would be fooled by birds. If he was unfamiliar with the sky and what to expect, had he seen the birds under unusual conditions, then it might be conceivable. But there was nothing in the weather reports to suggest that viewing conditions would have obscured birds to the point where Rankin would be unable to identify them. At any rate, this is one of the sightings made before Arnold that appears in the Project Blue Book files. For those keeping score at home, in the great AMC analysis of these early sightings, this is incident number 29. I don't know how the sightings were assigned numbers. Arnold was incident number 17. So Arnold was incident number 17, and the Rankin one, I guess, was number 29. Although this is another of those pre-Arnold sightings, it wasn't reported until after Arnold. Had there been documentation for it prior to Arnold, it would be a valuable observation. After Arnold, it is interesting, but nowhere is important. I disagree on that last sentence. I think it's just as equally as important. Sounds very credible. Says here, in terms of the Rankin, this is a commenter. In terms of the Rankin writing, for example, we don't seem to have any data that would allow a reasonable estimate of altitude to be made. This makes it difficult to rule out the birds hypothesis, however unlikely such a misidentification may seem. I don't think an experienced pilot like that they would know craft from birds. I mean, come on. They saw it twice. They saw the formation twice. Um, I'm gonna end there since I don't want to make the video too long, because then it would be just takes a while to upload these from here, from this computer. But yeah, let me know your thoughts below. That was a pretty interesting read, and I found out some new things here. So some of these things I just read for the first time. So as I'm delving further into the flying saucer craze of the late 40s. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, any further thoughts and comments below. I'm going to keep delving into this because I find it, really interesting, really fascinating, and I'll be back with more videos soon.